Welcome to the IRS Solution Attorney Show. If you have problems with the IRS, don't focus on the negative, focus on the solutions. With the IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish. For over 15 years, he's been helping taxpayers with IRS problems reclaim their lives and their financial stability. Now, here's your host of the IRS Solution Attorney Show, Darrin T. Mish.
That's right. That's me. The IRS Solution Attorney, Darrin T. Mish.
You sound like you had to think about that for a minute.
Now, there are lots and lots of Darrin Mishes out there in the world, but I'm Darrin T. Mish.
What?
The
All
IRS
right.
Solution Attorney.
I'm your co-host, Katrina Madewell. There can't be more than one of you.
Actually, if you Google Darrin Mish,
Is it really?
and you're kind of a little bit loose about the spelling of my first name, there is a gentleman in Iowa who, in his spare time, races stock cars. So that's kind of cool. That's the only one I know of.
You're Darrin like Bewitched, Darrin.
How many farmer Darrins are there? I think only one. You.
Well, the guy in Iowa, there's a very high likelihood that he might have that little side gig going, too.
Not only Farmer Darrin, but Farmer IRS Darrin that's also an attorney.
Yeah, probably none. So
You're right about that.
There is another Katrina Madewell in California.
Oh, wow.
Oh, but not like you.
Do you want to know? Do you want to know how I found out?
How's that?
So I had my domain or my URL registered, KatrinaMadewell.com, and forgot to renew it.
Oh, no.
And she picked it up. She was a personal trainer. So don't you know, I was on a wait list, and as soon as that sucker
And then she let it go?
She did, yep. I got it back.
Oh,
I have.
goodness.
There's another Pat George because I did the same thing. It's PatGeorge.com in North Carolina. She's a realtor.
Really?
Yeah, she's about 70 years old.
Yeah,
and
she ain't letting that go unless she's,
I've been keeping an eye on that one.
You can order a back order URL. So like you go to GoDaddy, you can just order it and pay for it, and it'll wait. It'll park itself there.
But the moral of that story is,
You snooze, you lose.
If you own KatrinaMadewell.com, why don't you just go ahead and spring for 10 years at $10 a year?
I did. I already have it.
Okay. So there are some people who believe, me included, that Google would actually pay a little bit better attention to a domain that's been registered for 10 years as opposed to one that just pops up.
Well, that's factual.
For 1 year.
That's true.
Well, it's hard to say anything's factual when you deal with Google, but I agree.
But that was proven.
Okay. Well, that's good. My website at getirshelp.com, which you should definitely visit for all of your needs for information about handling tax problems, has been registered for a long time and for a long time.
Which is probably where most of your clients start. I seriously doubt they want to just hop right on the phone with you. But if you do, his number is 888-GET-MISH.
Not that there's any problem with hopping right on the phone. 888-GET-MISH, that's 888-438-6474.
They like to research you and read your content and watch your YouTube videos. You've talked several times about how they watch hours and hours of YouTube videos.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of people do. And I think it's a scary kind of a situation, dealing with tax problems.
Well, it's fear of the unknown, and they're probably trying to learn a little bit about you and about their issue to educate themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's very important to most people that when they decide to get help and they're going to spend good money on some help, they want to make sure that there's somebody that they can trust or they feel comfortable with. I think the communication style is also really important. A lot of attorneys are so sort of focused and identify as being attorneys that they don't communicate in a clear manner that lay people can understand. Mm-hmm. Two attorneys could go to the bar and we could have a conversation and nobody who hasn't gone to law school could understand what in the world we were talking about. But that's not how you talk to regular people who have real problems. You don't talk to them like that. It doesn't serve them, and it's not good for business.
Yeah. I mean, well, think about it. It's no different in any other industry. I mean, even my industry, they want people that can explain it in a manner in which they can understand. I mean, for most people, it's their biggest asset, liability, and monthly payment. So it doesn't do a whole lot of good to be quoting a whole bunch of Florida statutes and that sort of stuff when they just need to know how it's going to relate to them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So today we're going to do a show, the 10 first steps to solving your IRS problem. Thought we'd kind of try and break it down.
We got some Facebook love.
We thought we'd kind of break it down. We also stream the shows live on Facebook Live as well, both at my personal page and the IRS Solution Attorney page. So if you're on Facebook, you should go ahead and like the IRS Solution Attorney page because we try to post the videos every single week.
Yes, we do. With the rare exception, we have to throw a pre-record in there. We're always in here every week.
And since in this first segment, it's all about the pitch. So so far we've gone over the website, the phone number, the Facebook Live.
Well, we don't usually do that, but it's not a bad place to start.
We don't. So we might as well go all the way and talk about the podcast. So all the episodes are on the IRS Solution Attorney podcast as well. well as there's an app in both stores for your phone or your iPad or whatever you got. And it's also called the IRS Solution Attorney. It's all the past episodes, a couple of years worth now.
And we've had some fun stuff. And it's not all IRS stuff all the time.
I think we could do a morning show and be fine. I really do.
Yeah.
It's just that I've seen some of these people's paychecks here at the radio station, and they're a little bit scary.
You don't want to trade your day job? You want to do a Pat test, don't you?
Well, Pat's got a great job. It's fun, for
Yes,
sure.
it's fun.
I don't know very many people happier than Pat George, at least on outward appearances.
That's because he has his best friend named Tequila.
He's got a lot of things going for him. He has a lovely wife. We see
What, no
pictures of her
comment
all the
from
time.
the peanut gallery back there this morning?
I've been good. I just got back from Dallas, and they gave me a nice present, and I enjoyed that for the Memorial Day weekend, and I've been good ever since Sunday.
I've got a bottle of fine tequila in my liquor cabinet that's unopened, and I need to bring it to him because I'm not going to drink it.
You also have a bottle of fine
Rum that I haven't opened either.
Anyway.
Real quick pitch for Pat George. Pat George is looking for a refrigerator. If you've got a refrigerator that you want to get rid of, call the station at 888-404-1010, 888-404-1010.
Most
Pat
important
George,
thing is the thermostat works.
Yeah.
I have one. The thermostat never shuts off.
he needs a working garage refrigerator. Not sure if he'll come pick it up.
Oh, I'll
He's
come
got
and
a
pick it
truck.
up.
He'll get it. He's got a truck. He'll get it. Either that or I'll find you one, Pat. We always find stuff.
Yeah, somebody just says, hey, the refrigerator go with the house? Yeah, I don't care.
No, it's not like that. but
I got a washer and dryer with the house that we bought last
Yeah.
summer. Well, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, but he's saying, like, if there's a property and someone says, oh, does the refrigerator go with the house? I don't know. Maybe not. And the refrigerator disappears. That's what he's saying.
Oh, gotcha.
Can't you do that?
No.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
By the way, did you notice that PatGeorge.com, she's a Keller Williams?
No, I didn't.
She's a Keller Williams.
Should we invite her on the show?
So you work with two Pat
Not
Georges,
my show.
kinda.
You can invite her on your show. Not sure Pat George.
You don't need two Pat Georges.
She
on one
might
show.
she might have an IRS problem, Darrin, because you talk about how realtors are your biggest clients, which is not how we met, by the way. Full disclosure.
Yeah. Is that right?
That's what you
Anyway.
said. You said you have a lot of realtor clients. You don't?
No, I was trying to tease you about having a tax problem, which you didn't have.
I didn't.
But yeah, I would guess, and I don't know this to be true, but I would guess that most real estate agents have tax problems. Because I mean,
Depends on the market.
Think about how you get paid. It's just screwy.
Not me, but
Yeah, you have multiple closings today, right?
I do. Yeah.
But that's not how most real estate agents roll. Most real estate agents don't have a radio show and all that stuff either. But you've really got it going on.
And,
But again, it's the lay person. Like, people don't care about any of that stuff. They just want to know that I can talk to them and help them sell their house and help them get where they want to go.
You know what we all care about? Bottom line, what's in it for me? That's what's going through every single person's mind. And I'm talking about clients or customers right now. Really, it's what's in it for me. If you can fill that "what's in it for me" kind of sort of question,
Yes.
you're going to do great. If you can't, then you're not going to do as well.
we're really close to the break now. We've just chit-chatted.
Oh my
a little bit.
gosh, I'm so sorry.
Don't
Hopefully
worry.
we're
Before we
entertaining
get,
you guys.
You are. But before we get down to the break, you got to tell me about your lake trip. The lake trip that you went over on some lake.
So last week we were talking about we were going to go to Bob's River Place, right? And it's like a redneck water park up in it's in near Perry, Florida. It's more like, I forget the name of the town. It's Branford is the name of the town. And it was a trip. The place is really, really cool. The one thing that was going through my head the whole time we were there was, this is America, man. This is like America.
And there's no charge for that, is there?
It was like $35 to park. We had a carload of 7.
Oh,
7.
But that,
$35 to park.
but that was it.
Right.
That was, so it was basically $5 a piece. There was tall water slides. There was like ridiculous rope swings. Ridiculous. I'm talking
Oh, my kids would love that.
50 to 70 feet off the water. People,
the big infatuation.
People jumping off of them, doing like quadruple flips and stuff.
Were there any cutoff jeans?
I did not see any cutoff jeans, probably because jeans cost $100 a pair now. But there was lots of crazy people dressed. There was and tattoos. Yeah,
Everybody has a tattoo. Like, if you don't have a tattoo, you're the minority.
So it was. I'm not saying anything bad about tattoos,
No,
but there
I'm
were
just
some
saying
interesting
that
tattoos. And I would say the average age was really young. It was like 20,
How far did you have to walk from the parking lot at $35 to where the water was?
50 feet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was probably. I don't know. There's a couple hundred people there. There was really short lines. Place is really cool. Bob, the owner, he's
You met Bob?
He's like 82, and Bob just hangs out. He's just hanging out, having fun. There's basically very few rules There's a very little supervision, and there's signs everywhere that say this property is homesteaded. You can't sue me for anything.
Oh, fabulous!
And so
I
then,
love
of course,
it.
in my lawyer brain, I was like, okay, so how would I organize this guy's stuff if I was his attorney? How would I protect his whatever assets he does have?
Was it cash only too?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I want to go tubing. We haven't been tubing in so long.
And we did the math. He has tubing.
He does.
Inner tubes are $3.
Wait, how long's the river? They can tube?
It was like it's pretty slow. It wasn't real long, and it's real wide. There's boats going real fast, but there's people doing it. It looked fun.
All right. Well, this is the IRS Solution Attorney Show. It's not all IRS stuff all the time. And Mr. Darrin Mish and I will be back in just a minute.
Are you suffering from IRS problems? Do you owe back taxes you can't pay? Is your paycheck or bank account being levied? Or maybe you haven't filed tax returns in years and simply don't know what to do. This is Darrin T. Mish to tell you that if you're tired of IRS problems hanging over your head and are ready for a fresh start, we may be able to help. Call the law offices of Darrin T. Mish at 888-GET-MISH, 888-GET-MISH. I can help you file old tax returns, work to release tax liens or stop wage levies, even negotiate deals to pay off back taxes at a discount, sometimes for pennies on the dollar. Hey, let's face it, these days it's not hard to get into tax trouble. A divorce, failed business, health problems, you name it. The point is, IRS problems may be solved if you're willing to take the first step. Call for a free consultation at 888-GET-MISH. That's 888-438-6474. Or go to the web at getirshelp.com, because the one sure thing is, IRS problems don't solve themselves. So get Mish. 888-438-6474. Principal Office, Tampa.
Tear it up.
I did think about that for a minute. I heard this music. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Oh, wait, yeah, the red lights. Yeah, we're live.
We're playing this for in-laws from Colorado.
I have a question. So, Sweet Home Alabama, right?
Right.
Why do people in Florida sing Sweet Home Alabama at the top of their lungs?
It's the theme song.
For Redneckia.
Oh, yeah.
And when I say Redneckia, I want to clarify.
It's Southern everything.
No, I know.
Can you please look that up and see if that's a real word?
I want people who are listening to realize that I'm not making fun of redneck culture when I say Redneckia.
Oh, yeah, because you'd be making fun of yourself.
Yeah, it's actually a term of endearment. There's lots of things about the country lifestyle that I think are fabulous, and that people who have been living in the suburbs or the city, like me, pretty much my whole life.
Isn't there a song called a Redneck Yacht Club?
Yes, there is.
There definitely is. There definitely is.
Redneck Girl? Which could be you, Katrina.
Maybe not.
Okay, we're going to eventually have to talk about tax stuff here real quick.
We will.
But I have something to say, okay?
Yes.
I was introduced to the country lifestyle by my wife.
I knew you were going to say it. I knew it.
Who's also from Colorado.
Oh, that's
and it's
funny.
been a slow and gradual progression to where I am now, where I have special boots for the farm for stepping in special
Heather,
stuff.
you converted him to Redneckia.
Okay, so we're in the second segment. We haven't even mentioned the word IRS other than for my title. So we're going to talk about the 10 first steps to solving your IRS problem.
Which, by the way, if you have one, you can get Darrin at 888-GET-MISH.
Or that's 888-GET-MISH. That's 888-438-6474. Okay, so the first thing, pretty simple. Lots of people don't do it. Read all of the letters from the IRS immediately.
Yeah, right.
Do not let them pile up on your bureau desk.
You should have made number one, open the envelope.
Yeah, if you, usually people don't even open them. I get large stacks of mail that I get to open at the office, which is no problem. But it's kind of interesting that people don't open them. That shows you the level of fear right there that the people have about the IRS, for sure.
Well, I've seen people that owe a significant amount of debt, and they just don't even want to open their credit card statements anymore because they've got to a place where they can't pay them. Same concept.
Yeah, it probably is. It doesn't help that the IRS letters are super confusing, and to regular people who don't look at them every single day like I do. And again, sometimes the hardest part in dealing with the IRS is overcoming that feeling of dread and actually reading what they have to say. It might not be that bad. Or you might have made a simple mistake that you can clear up quickly. I've gotten lots of those letters to myself over the years where they're just like little things, just not even big. It's funny. If you change your address with the IRS, you get a letter that says you change your address.
I just got that letter.
Yeah.
I got that. They said something about I don't know, something about change your address. I should have brought it.
Now, quick question. Did you open the letter? You must have.
Well, my staff opened it and then they gave it to me. And yeah.
Okay, here's another.
Actually, didn't open that one, I think, because it said IRS on the outside.
I was going to say, here's another little helpful hint. If you're a small business owner and other people normally open your mail, tell them not to open letters from the IRS for you.
Yeah, they didn't open that one. They didn't open that one, but they usually open the mail.
And just remember, these problems are not going to go away by themselves. You can't just ignore your way out of an IRS problem, typically, although I got lots of stories where people did. But that's not the way to solve them. Just go ahead and read the mail. If you get the little orange slip in the mail, in your mailbox that says, come on down to the post office and pick up this certified, do it. Go pick up the certified. Don't just ignore it.
Why not? Because we've talked about this. It doesn't mean... Why not?
Because usually... the certified mail is important. There's some letters that come in the mail that are certified, and you have appeal rights. If you appeal them, you can keep levies from happening. If you don't appeal, then you're going to get levied. They're going to clean out your bank account. They're going to clean out your wages. It's going to be really ugly. You're going to be very unhappy, and then you're going to come to me with a gigantic mess that I can't easily solve because you didn't open your mail.
So wouldn't they have the argument, I never got the letter? Because technically they didn't pick it up. Doesn't matter?
If that worked, then nobody would ever go pick up their mail. The IRS law says they have to mail it to the last known address. Sort of an interesting issue, right? Here we are in Florida. People move all the time. Last known address was basically the last address on your last filed tax return. Mm-hmm. If you're one of my clients, that was 27 years ago, and so they don't know where you live. And so that's all they have to do is just certify that they mailed it to the last known address.
And so the second step in solving the IRS problems is to call. Call Darrin.
Yeah,
call Darrin at 888-GET-MISH. He'll help.
If you have one of these small issues that are going on, or if you literally don't understand the issue at all, it could be a good idea to call the IRS and just find out. Now, if you haven't filed a tax return in 17 years, you probably shouldn't call the IRS.
We should do a whole show on the simple things that you can take care of immediately that people ignore. Wouldn't you agree that people probably get these little simple letters or something they just I don't want to deal with it?
Yeah, so my content guy who's watching the show right now on Facebook should take notes on that.
Yes.
So we should... Because
that's my point.
The top 7 things that you can handle by yourself.
Right, and there's a whole lot of content on your website, on your podcast, on the information. So a lot of times they wouldn't even have to pay you. They could just go there and get the information to answer the real quick question they have. Yeah,
and some people who are listening are thinking, well, why would he do that? Honestly,
why not?
Because I think it's cool. And I try to treat people the way I want to be treated.
Yeah. If it's simple and it doesn't make sense, then why not? Why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah. And because, websites anymore are all about content, and the more content I have on my website, and there's tons. I mean, we're just going through a reorg right now on the website that's long overdue, probably 10 years overdue. But we're reorganizing it so that people can find the questions that they have better. Because there's literally, I think there's thousands of pages of the website. But that's another reason we put content up there. So
I think you can add a search bar to your site too, where it kind of pulls stuff all over your site.
Yeah, and we're adding breadcrumbs so you can kind of go back to where you came from and things like that.
Gotcha. Well, our third tip is going to be to know your rights.
Yeah, there's something called IRS Publication 1. It's probably a good idea.
Really? Publication 1?
It's Publication 1. And I think that is to demonstrate how important it is to the IRS that the taxpayers understand their rights. You have rights to privacy. You have the right to professional and courteous service. We've done a whole show on what your rights are as a taxpayer, many of which are violated routinely by the IRS. But in an organization as big as that, there's going to be some problems from time to time, right?
Can we go back to number 1 real quick
Sure.
with regards to the mail? Because we had a question from one of our Facebook viewers. She wanted to know if all the letters are always sent certified mail. Well, to answer your question, for the letter that I got, it was not. It was just regular mail, but it was just something saying they changed the address. So is everything where they owe money sent certified?
Absolutely not. In fact, the reason that I would encourage you so strongly to go and get the certified mail is that that's usually bad news. And so if
who wants to go pick up bad news?
Well, because we can prevent it from becoming worse news.
Okay. All right. Point taken.
So usually you're not going to get a certified letter until you're kind of well along in the process. But I would really encourage you to go get the letter, because otherwise we're just in a situation where we're guessing and we're assuming and we're trying to figure out what's going on. And some of these things literally need to be dealt with today. if you come in fact, I was meeting with a gentleman yesterday, a fine gentleman, really like this guy. I represented him in the past, and he brought in a notice of deficiency, which comes certified mail, by the way, and he had tax court rights, so he could have filed a tax court petition, except for the deadline was the day before yesterday.
Oh, really?
Now, it turns out we weren't going to file a tax court petition anyway, but
had he needed one, he would have been SOL?
Yeah, he would have been straight out of luck, for sure.
Yeah, that's what I meant. You got it. You got me. All right, so, the fourth step.
So what are your rights?
Four?
Let's go back real quick to know your rights. One of your rights.
There's a lot of them.
One of your rights is to file an appeal of certain decisions and actions that the IRS can take. And one of those is they have to send you a final notice of intent to levy before they can actually seize your paycheck or garnish your pay or seize your bank account. And if you go down and get that letter called a final notice of intent to levy, you can come to somebody like me and we can appeal it and we can stretch it out and hopefully fix the situation or improve the situation before they do that, prevent them from, taking your money, or you can even file that appeal yourself.
Which, on the topic of know your rights, we did do a whole show on this and it is available on the podcast. And one would have thought that might have been a boring show, but it actually wasn't.
No,
because you have a lot of rights as a taxpayer.
Yeah, you do. And if somebody like me who knows what's going on, I mean, we really can tie the IRS in knots for months, sometimes years, just by exercising, taxpayer rights.
Yeah. And it's half the battle, right? Is knowing what the rights are, what the laws are, what the rules are. All right, so number 4, and this is an interesting one, determining if you actually owe the money.
Yeah, so don't panic and pay now, hoping to figure out later if the IRS is right. The IRS does make mistakes.
Wait, you said don't panic and pay now?
Yeah, some people do. They do. Some people.
Well, we've talked about this before, about pay even, file even if you can't pay, so it's interesting. I don't know. You say don't panic and pay.
Yeah, when we come back, we can talk about some examples of those people. I don't run into those people all that often, right? Because if you're the panic and pay kind of person, you're not going to come ask me for advice because you just solved the problem by paying. But I have seen it where people are absolutely just really worried.
It could have been a big check they just wrote, and now they're curious if they actually owed it, and they may come back to you.
It could be, and there might be chances if you panic and pay. Of getting some of that money back if you didn't actually owe it.
That's what I was going to ask you. All right. Thanks for answering that. Well, you're listening to the IRS Solution Attorney Show, and today's topic is all about 10 first steps to helping you solve an IRS problem if you have one, or maybe you know someone that does. You can connect them with Darrin Mish at 888-GET-MISH.
888-438-6474.
We'll be back in just a minute.
Bob called. He wanted to hear this one.
So, Pat George is ever so entertaining. We were talking about, it's not Bob's Water Park, Bob's Water or something somewhere?
Bob's River Place.
River Place.
In Branford, Florida.
So, Pat George is pulling up videos of Bob's.
I'm looking for Darrin. I'm looking for him and the family.
I actually posted a couple videos to my Facebook page. I'll go ahead and post them to the IRS Solution Attorney page too.
So you can't even have a water slide on your property because homeowners insurance won't insure it. I guess Bob is self-insured.
Yeah, Bob's self-insured because he's taking advantage of the Florida homestead law.
Are they swimming in iced tea?
It is. The water is brown, and it was kind of cold actually. I would say the water was definitely in the 70s.
See, I don't like water like that. I wouldn't get out of the tube.
It was too rough and rowdy for gators. So. Nobody really worried about it. So there's no alcohol allowed on the premises, and there's no food. There's not even any trash cans
or swearing.
So if you bring food, you got to bring out your own trash. What I found refreshing about the place was that it's all about personal responsibility, which I'm a big proponent of. So if you get hurt at Bob's, you just got to. I mean, you assume the risk.
Suck it up, Buttercup.
If you're going to jump off a 20-foot rope swing, you might get hurt. This is why Darrin T. Mish, the IRS Solution Attorney, welcome back, by the way, did not partake in any of these rope swing activities because I'm smarter than that.
I broke my toe in my pool. I might break something there, especially if there was alcohol involved. So,
Anyway, so let's get back to the 10 first steps to solving your IRS tax problem. we were talking about determine if you actually owe the money. So there's lots of instances where the IRS has the opinion that you owe a lot of money. I'll give you an example. Cancellation of debt. This is a really big example, okay?
Oh, yeah.
So you might have a
Heard of that one a
1099
lot.
for cancellation of debt for $289,000, canceling, your primary residence mortgage or something like that. And so for people who aren't aware, let's explain the concept real quick. Congress has decided that if a debt is canceled to a taxpayer, so a bank, let's say, for example, a bank cancels a debt that you owe, the Congress has decided,
Like via a short sale or a foreclosure.
or for any reason. Let's say they just write off a big credit card. Okay. And Congress has decided that that is just like you having the money and paying it off. So then they're going to tax as income the cancellation of debt. Now, this always makes me scratch my head. It's the screwiest thing I've ever heard of. But
Glad I'm not the only one.
But it happens. But there's lots of exceptions to cancellation of debt as taxable income, and one of those would be if it was a primary mortgage on your house, and then there's timing rules and stuff like that.
If you're insolvent.
If you're insolvent, or if the debt was actually discharged in a bankruptcy, then you don't have to pay the tax. So the IRS might send you a letter called a CP 2000 and say, hey, guess what? You owe us a bunch more money. And if you're a panic and pay person, you might just stroke the check and pay them. But in my scenario, let's just say in this imaginary scenario that you were insolvent at the time the debt was canceled, and we can prove that, and all we have to do is, fill out some papers and send them in, and they'll go ahead and negate that notice that they just sent you that you owed the money. So understand if you owe the money. That's all we're trying to say here, because you might not.
So if you actually owe the money.
Well, another example that comes to mind real quick is, what if you didn't file a tax return? The IRS prepared a substitute for a return. There's a huge number on there. Okay, it might be $80,000, say, and then
Which would not be right, because you didn't take any write-offs or anything.
Yeah, people always come in and say, well, they prepared this return for me, and it's like phony baloney. I wouldn't owe that much. I wouldn't know anything.
You didn't do it, so they did it for you.
Yeah, they say, I wouldn't know anything if I filed that tax return. I say, well, you're in luck. We can file that tax return, and we can probably wipe that out if what you're saying is true. And so don't just automatically panic and pay.
Do you think they automatically audit something like that?
What's that? No, they don't.
They don't?
It's amazing. It's truly amazing that. So they prepare a substitute for return, and you prepare an original return, and you would think that the audit rate would be high. It's not. It's not high at all.
Interesting to know.
Now, if you file an original return and it looks like there's unicorns and rainbows were involved in preparing the return, you might get audited. You probably will. But if it looks legit, if it looks good enough, then you're probably not going to be audited.
Tax expense, unicorn food.
And I've seen some unicorn returns in my day, usually because
funny.
the people came in because they got an audit notice, and you look at the return and you're like, wow, that's fascinating.
Okay, what is it? Give me an example of a unicorn on a tax return.
Oh,
I don't put any of this crazy stuff on my return.
You're totally putting me on the spot.
All right, the next time you're digging through returns, you're going to have to just think about something and just jot that down or text it to me.
I've seen some that are so wrong. I mean, that your jaw just drops. You're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe. There's an example that is running through my mind right now, and I can't say because it's too unique.
Okay.
It's too unique.
No, I just meant like an example of something someone tries to write off, and like, for example, unicorn food. Ha ha ha.
Well,
anyway.
The reason that kids get Social Security numbers at the hospital now is because back in the day, 20 plus years ago, people literally used to write off FIDO. They would list their dog as a dependent.
So people making up socials or taking deductions on dependents and all that stuff.
They would do that. And actually, you didn't used to have the kid's Social Security number. It was just like little Johnny.
I've got 12 kids.
Yeah, that's what would happen. So,
all right. So if you owe the money, decide if you can and should pay it off immediately.
Yeah,
aren't you supposed to always say pay it immediately?
Well, if the IRS says you owe $1,000 and that's about how much you have in your checking account and that's what you need to pay the rent, don't take your rent money and pay the IRS. I mean, they're not that important. Although I do have a client that went without air conditioning in the middle of the summer so he could pay my fee. By the way, we rewarded him generously by allowing for the rest of the case to be pro bono. Once I heard that, I didn't have the heart to make him pay the rest of the fee.
Oh,
but
that's an example of responsibility.
It's an example of responsibility for sure. That is true. I mean, that was a guy that really went above and beyond.
So we talk about this next one a lot, but if you actually do owe the money and it's more than you can pay, there's some options.
Yeah, you have a certain amount of time to respond and pay according to whatever letter that you got. Every single letter you get it has a deadline on it. And it's always fascinating to me. There's there's some personality types that don't care, like, at all. If there's a deadline, they're like, whatever, what are they going to do? And then there's another kind of personality that says, well, I've got a 10-day deadline on this, and like, it's panic time if that deadline comes and goes.
Yeah.
And the real answer is somewhere in the middle of those two extremes.
Right.
It's
far left, far right. There's a middle.
The answer is not, completely panic and freak out over the deadline. And the other answer is not completely blow it off and we'll deal with it never. So it's somewhere in the middle, and it kind of depends on each case and kind of where you are.
Step number 7 is kind of funny, and of course I can comment on this one, but it's don't pay someone else's IRS bill. And you think about this and go, really? But then reading it, I'm like, okay, it makes sense.
Yeah, business partners and former spouses have a way of sticking other taxpayers with the bill. The IRS generally holds all signers of a return responsible jointly and severally for the entire amount due. However, you may be able to avoid liability in some cases. For example, if you find out your ex was involved in shady financial dealings that you didn't know about and didn't profit from, you may be able to qualify for innocent spouse. And this is becoming more common. I'm seeing it more and more.
Yeah.
I don't personally do a lot of innocent spouse cases because for whatever reason, I don't get those cases at that point in time. I think a lot of family law attorneys do them. Mm-hmm. Where you're representing one spouse and the other spouse was self-employed or whatever and skimming or doing something that you didn't know about. There's a lot of cases where one spouse forges the name of the other on the tax return. They'll show that their spouse or return showing a little bit of money, and then they'll file one with a lot of money, just stuff like that. And so you can get out of it through innocent spouse in some cases.
Well, I have been in this position, and we owed some taxes to the IRS, and that's exactly what they told me, is that you both owe it equally. And so when I had told my old business partner that, they were like, well, we're not going to pay it. We just won't file taxes, and we'll pull all of our money out of the bank, and we'll live on cash. And I'm like, well, we can't live like that. So we end up paying it all.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit where in the context of payroll taxes, where let's say there's two partners, both partners are going to be held jointly and severally liable. And really what the IRS does is they assess it against both people, and then they make attempts to collect from both people. Okay. And inevitably there's one of those people has money, and ambition, and the other person.
Or one of them is going to pay it and one of them that won't.
The other one doesn't, I represented a guy recently, great guy. And he used to own a business, and he sold the business, but he was still working in the business after. And the new owners decided that they weren't going to pay the payroll taxes. They were going to do other stuff with the money. And since my client was still peripherally involved in that business, he got tagged. He was one of 4 people who it was held responsible by the IRS for the part of the payroll tax. And we ended up doing an offer in compromise. And I can't remember. I think the total balance due was like $400,000 or $500,000, and I think we got it settled for around $43,000. And so that $43,000 is going to come off of the bill of those other 3 people. But those other 3 people were kind of like your former business partner. Mm-hmm. They're like, nah, we're just going to do nothing.
Yep.
Well, okay, I guess. I mean, there's probably better answers than I'm just going to go off the radar and live on cash for the next 10 years.
Some people can do that, though. We just could never live like that.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head here in the studio just going, well, I don't really understand that, because there's better options almost always than I'm just going to drop off the radar and kind of do nothing with them.
Well, this was many years ago. I've shared it on the show before, but I was literally pregnant with our oldest daughter, and the IRS, the revenue officer, came to our office and she saw me. I was really pregnant, and it was a rough time financially for us. We were young.
Yeah. And there's revenue officers fall all across the spectrum from, reasonable to unreasonable, just like everyone else in society, right? I mean, driving out from the studio today, I might encounter the most courteous drivers, or I might, encounter the worst drivers in the world. Who knows?
The lady I got was nice. She took pity on me. She abated a lot of the penalties and interest.
I wish I knew who that was, but I'm sure you don't remember anymore.
No. No, it was been a long time ago.
I've been doing this so long that I know who that was.
Oh, you do?
I mean, I'm sure I know who it was. I just, because I knew all the people 12 years ago or 14 years ago or whatever.
She was nice, though. She was nice to me, because I was like, I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I was young 20s, It was a big deal.
So number 8 is kind of important and a little bit controversial. I'm going to waffle a little bit on it. Don't put your tax bill on your high interest credit card. And that's because the IRS charges interest and penalties, and that is true. But the interest that they charge is nothing compared to a high interest credit card. I would say a high interest credit card is what? Everything over like 20%, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think they're all high interest because you can't get that return anywhere else. But
yeah, Dave Ramsey would say
don't do it at all.
0.9 is high. But, but you know, I would say anything over like 19% is probably pretty high.
I just can't imagine people would put an IRS tax net on a credit card.
Oh, there might be. There might be scenarios where it's a good idea.
I'm going to put it on my American Express Black.
It might be idea because remember, tax debt is hard to discharge in bankruptcy. Credit card debt easy to discharge in bankruptcy.
So you're saying like if enough time passes, maybe.
I'm not saying that anybody would intentionally do that.
Well, they could. Maybe they're hoping the financial position will get better. They could get that monkey off their back, and
Yeah, could be.
Sometimes it doesn't happen as they plan.
Again, it's like don't panic and pay. That's sort of the what's the word I'm thinking of? That's the theme of the show today.
Yep.
Don't panic and pay.
Don't panic
You need to
and
know
pay.
what your options are.
All right, when we come back, we're going to talk about number 9, which is document everything in the 10 first steps to solving an IRS problem. We'll be back in a minute. We've been here for 2 hours. We're ready to go. This is the IRS Solution Attorney Show.
So Thomas Jefferson once said that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. And I'm not sure really what that has to do with anything other than I really like that quote. And I do think it has to do with we need to watch as citizens our politicians and our government to make sure that they don't get out of hand. And I think we're well down that path.
So this is an interesting one. That's probably one that gets skipped over all too often. But today we're talking about the first steps if you have to solve an IRS problem, how to go about it. And we left off at number 9, which is documenting everything.
Yeah, you need to document what you're doing. If you're going to call the IRS, go ahead and write down the person's name and employee number. Not that that's going to do much for you. You should write down what you agreed to if you agree to something so that you have some record of it. If you mail the IRS something, which is typically how I deal with them, I do a lot of stuff in writing with them. You're going to want to make sure that you keep copies of it. You'd be surprised. People say, yeah, I sent him a letter. Well, can you show me a copy? Well, no, I didn't keep a copy of it. Okay, great.
But you have to document what you sent, when, how you sent it, the calls you made.
If you mail them something, you should send it certified mail because if you don't, they're going to say that they lost it or they didn't get it. You didn't mail it. So you're going to have all that stuff. It's like dealing with any other giant bureaucracy. If you were dealing with your insurance company for a car insurance claim, are you going to just send them a letter with no copy of it and just like hope it works out?
Any
Probably
mess,
not.
you need to go buy like a spiral notebook and just document any mess, right? It's fair to say that?
Yeah. I've had ID theft claims against myself in the past and it,
that just makes me want to throw up.
Yeah, it just takes time to get it all worked out. And I had a little file and I had copies of everything and all the certifieds and all that stuff to just make sure it got taken care of right.
So document. And number 10 on our list of 10 first steps to solving IRS problem is just to get some help.
Yeah, this stuff can be hard. I mean, some of the examples we came up with today were easy, really easy. If you get a letter from the IRS that says you owe $587, you probably shouldn't call me. It's probably not going to make a lot of sense unless there's more to come, which is also fairly common.
That could happen.
If you get a check for if you get a bill for $587 and you haven't filed a tax return in 20 years, you might still want to get some help so you get back in the system. And
you're like, Darrin, can you look at this before I get that bill for $5 million? Because I knew it's coming. How I got one for $500, I don't know, but I know it's coming.
A lot of people are worried about how much it's going to cost, and this is not a commercial for me. Okay, I'm just going to talk about how we charge people fees real quick so that you understand. A lot of people are really worried about how much it's going to cost. And I understand. I get it. I worry about what things cost too. But when number one, I don't take every case. In fact, I'm down to taking only about 35% or so of the people who come in because I only want to take cases that are right for them and right for me. And what we're shooting for when we quote fees is we're shooting to save you $10 for every dollar you pay us. So let that think. I mean, That's a really good deal, right? So if
or
I can
more,
save
in
you,
some cases, substantially more.
I would say that's what we're shooting for. Quite often, it's way higher. Sometimes it's lower. It just depends. But that's what we're shooting for is sort of a 10 times ROI, return on investment, so that you kind of have an idea of what we're talking about here.
Makes sense.
So real quick, I think there was at least one question that I wanted to answer today. Craig had chimed in and wanted to know, what should I do if I make a mistake on my federal return that I've already filed? Well, this is a good question. If it's a really old federal return, So it's been more than 3 years, say, then you can no longer amend that return.
Oh, after 3 years, you cannot?
After 3 years, you can't amend. Sometimes it's 2. It kind of depends. But let's call it 3 years, and you can no longer amend. You know what? Just shrug. Oops, made a mistake. Stuff happens. On the other hand, if it can be fixed, by all means, you should fix it. Because if you notice the mistake, they're going to notice the mistake. And their penalty is going to be 25% right off the top. If you amend, you're not going to pay that 25% penalty. So it's going to save you some money. Okay, so it sounds like it's about that time for the IRS train wreck of the week.
Train came rolling in. It already crashed.
This is the segment of the show where we talk about somebody who came in to the office with a big problem. They were a train wreck, and somehow it all worked out for the better. In this particular case, it's kind of a sad case. It's an older gentleman, and he's quite gullible. And he would even admit he's gullible. Okay. He's approaching retirement age, and what happened is he fell in love with somebody on the internet. He straight up fell in love on the internet. There was one of those guys, the football guys, a linebacker from somewhere, fell in love with this imaginary person on the internet. This is what happened to my client, and this person that he was in love with borrowed his entire retirement account.
Borrowed?
And he borrowed it, and it was wired to someplace in the Mideast, like Abu Dhabi or Dubai or someplace like that. And it was a couple $100,000, I think. And he borrowed the money, and he was supposed to pay it back. But you're in love with the person, so like, okay, right, kind of reasonable. Except for it was all a scam, and he lost all the money. Super sad, and it's really sad that he's that trusting. It's super sad that he was that trusting and that gullible, and so he lost the money. Well, the deal is he was not quite retirement age, and so there was an early retirement withdrawal penalty. And that ended up being about $44,000, not quite $44,000. So he came to me and he wanted to know what to do. And my best advice was,
did he actually get to meet the person?
No, because it wasn't a real person. It was probably lots of people.
Oh man!
So there was no real person.
Okay.
And
I was just curious, like if it was one person that scammed him out of his money, or like
no, it was probably a crime syndicate that actually did it. But anyway, he owed about $44,000, and he came to me. He wanted to know what to do, and what I decided to do was to file an offer and compromise based on what's called effective tax administration, or ETA. It's kind of a dumb name, but it really is kind of like a special circumstances sort of case. Like where, the guy had enough equity in his house to full pay, but if the IRS had caused him to sell his house to full pay, he's kind of being victimized twice, right? I mean, it just didn't seem fair. And so we filed that offer, and at the field level of the IRS, they basically just blew me out of the water. They're like, nope, sorry, dummy. That was,
sorry, dummy.
That was their opinion. And I was like, come on, like, where's the humanity in all of this? And so we filed an appeal, and I was really surprised. I didn't think the appeal was going to go through. And in speaking to the appeals officer, as soon as she got me on the line, she's like, yeah, I'm going to recommend this for acceptance. This is not right, because this guy was the victim of a fraud. We have it all well documented. There's police reports. There's
it's so sad.
All kinds of stuff. We actually tried to fix that case by filing an amended return and reporting that as a casualty loss, which would have meant he didn't have to pay tax on it. And they denied the amended return, which is harsh.
Wait, can they do that, or can you appeal that?
No, you can't appeal that. So
why? You can appeal everything else. You can appeal friggin' whistleblower reward things.
I know, it's bizarre. So we lost the amended return. That was going to be like the easy way. The offer was going to be like the hard way. And so far, I mean, we don't have the exact final letter yet, but it looks like the IRS is going to go ahead and go with this. And I forget how much it's going to settle for. It looks like it's going to settle for $433.36. I don't know, like $1,000. Probably like $1,000.
And he owed almost 44.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact amount, but it's a very small amount. It's still going to sting a little tiny bit, but it's way better than selling his house to pay off a tax bill that he really shouldn't have anyway.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like, that would just be horrible. There has to be another way.
That's not a typical case. I really like that case because I don't get to argue fairness very often, and because fairness is really not sort of a legal principle, really, kind of, but not really. And so
well, I'm glad you did it, and I'm glad you got to win.
Yeah, he's pretty happy about it.
All right. Well, this is the IRS Solution Attorney Show. You can get Darrin if you need him at 888-GET-MISH.
That's 888-438-6474.
GetIRSHelp.com, and we'll be here every week, every Thursday at 9.
9 a.m. to 10 a.m. We're out.